Hello, everyone. It's Marc Sabatella and from Mastering MuseScore, and welcome to the MuseScore Café. So this is my weekly series where we talk about, some aspect of making music using MuseScore, and in particular, this is part of my monthly series, first Wednesday of the month, which this is, right? So the third of the month. That's the third day of the month, first Wednesday of the month. So this is the Ask Me Anything session, meaning, I don't have anything in particular to be telling you back. I always have some things I can be telling you about, but I am here to answer your questions about any aspect of using MuseScore. I do want to give you a little bit of a heads up on something while I wait for some questions to come in. And thanks for everyone introducing yourself. Always love to see that happening and where people are coming from. And also as an opportunity to just make sure that everything's working. So hopefully everything is. I just did my tests and things were fine. So here's a little bit of news, two bits of news for you today. One is, so the current release of MuseScore is 4.0.2. So when MuseScore 4 came out, there was a 4.01 and then a 4.02 with little bug fixes here and there. The next release is planned to be 4.1, which will fix more bugs, but will also introduce some new features, reintroducing some of the things that didn't quite make the transition from MuseScore 3, and also some brand new features that have been kind of long requests, long-standing requests. So we'll be able to talk about that a bit more next week. The other thing we'll be talking about next week is this next week actually marks the anniversary both of the beginnings of the MuseScore Café, which started 5 years ago this month. 5 years ago this month was when I started. No, not the MuseScore Café. Sorry, that's not 5 years ago. Yeah, I'll have to get my date straight. But between the MuseScore Café anniversary and Mastering MuseScore in General's anniversary and the anniversary of the community, they're all kind of related. They're all in May, and so we're going to be kind of celebrating them next week. So I'm going to show you how to do the things that I was just seeing about asking about the double dot. I'll show you that in a second. But just to finish my thought, so next week we're going to have a little bit of a celebration of the anniversary of Mastering MuseScore and the community and the cafe and all this, but also be looking forward and talking about upcoming plans for MuseScore, which I'm not necessarily privy to, but will be after Friday. So after Friday, I'll know some more. Okay, so the first question that's come up is about double dots. So double dots are something, this is the dot we're talking about, the augmentation dot, and double dots are normally not recommended for most use, but every once in a while there's special situations where they can be useful, and because they're not normally recommended, they're not on the toolbar by default. So if you want to get the double dot on your toolbar because you're intending to use it more, click on the Customize Toolbar button here, and then you will see all the different options that are available, and you will see double augmentation dot. So you can add double, triple, and even quadruple augmentation dots. So if I click this thing right now, we'll see that now I've got that on my toolbar as well. You can also, if, for instance, like if you're only using it rarely and you really don't want to take up a toolbar space, are my captions not on? Yeah, my captions are on. So that should be fine. So if you don't want to take up space on the toolbar, you can also go to Edit, Preferences, Shortcuts. And then I'm going to try typing dot in here. Yeah, there we go. Toggle duration dot double. So if I select that command, I type dot into the search bar, and then I can click define, and I can try to type a shortcut that I think might not already be taken. The closest thing I can think of for double dot would be a colon. And if I type that, I'm surprised actually that's available, because I was thinking, I guess it's only not available while you're entering chord symbols. So it's going to let me do that. So in principle, I have now defined a shortcut for double dot. So I should be able to select a node or a rest or whatever and type colon and get the double dot. But no, it doesn't actually. I think colon isn't working on, it's not going to work on my keyboard because it's misinterpreted and it's taken by something else. So yeah, I was surprised it even let me do that. But if I define some other shortcut to be that instead, I would be able to assign it with a shortcut. So that's the other thing. So that's that question. Do I have any other questions, or do I keep just talking about some things? So I'll tell you about some of the things coming in 4.1. Now, actually, I really can't talk about details about that until I hear the presentation that's being given to the other developers on Friday. So, oh, good. A nice long question. Okay, that'll keep me busy a little while, right? Unless it's got a 2-word answer. But yeah, as of next week, I'll know a little bit more about plans for MuseScore 4, and I'll look forward to sharing that with you next week. Okay, so the difference between playing 2 triplets. Ooh. So Colin, you're asking an interesting question, and I'm going to read your reasoning here in a minute here, but it is an interesting question with no good answer. I'm going to say that, but now let me read your rationale here. You're transcribing a folk song. It's in 4/4 in the B part. There's a couple of bars that sounded like 6/8, but you could also just do it in triplets. And since most of the song is in 4, make more sense to just keep it that way. So first of all, my question is, why do 2 bars of 2/4 if you can do 1 bar of 4/4? I think I'd have to see the example. I wouldn't be inclined to change the time signature at all. I would just keep it in 4/4 and have 4 triplets in that measure. But it's possible I'm misunderstanding the exact situation. So I think you would need to attach the score or even just an image so I could see what you're talking about, or a link to a published version or something. But in general, yeah, you're right. You can, any given rhythm that's sort of subdivided in 3 could either be written as a very as triplets in 2/4 or 4/4, or it could be written in compound meter 6/8. It could even just be written in 3/4 with an appropriate tempo marking. And I talked about this like 2 weeks ago or so in my music master class. We talked about row, row, row your boat. And that depending, was that the song we talked about? I feel like it is. And depending on which transcription you look at, what published version of this you look at, you'll see some people doing it in 4/4 with triplets, some people in 2/4 with triplets, some people in 3/4, some people in 6/8. It's possible to notate the same piece any given way. And there's usually not a right or wrong about it, sort of a subjective call. But yeah, if it's only a couple measures, I wouldn't be changing time signatures. I'd much rather see triplets than a change of time signature if it's just a change. All right, so Nick's question here is how to enter hand claps on offbeat. Okay, so Nick, that is all questions are all good. I'm always going to say that's a good question. But I've got a couple answers for you. None of them are fantastic answers as far as that goes, but I'll show you what we got, and then you can decide. So I'm going to first enter what I think we want it to look like. So I'm going to enter just a treble clef staff here, and let me shrink down the window. There we go. By the way, one of the things that I just implemented yesterday, I haven't been doing a lot of development on MuseScore for the last couple of years. I've been focusing more on, what I'm doing here, support and teaching music and so forth. But one of the things I recently just got working yesterday, I think, is the page width command here. You can zoom to page width using the drop-down menu there. But there's supposed to be a keyboard shortcut. I had added a keyboard shortcut for that like in 3.6, but that sort of didn't get added into MuseScore 4 because the MuseScore 4 development had already started. So some of the new features added for 3.6 didn't make it into 4. So 4.1 will have now a keyboard shortcut for the page width command. And I happen to use that one a lot. All right. So, but now I'm going to zoom. And by the way, I'm zooming with Control touchpad. 2-finger swipe is scroll wheel. That's my normal way of just zooming if I just want to eyeball things. So you are talking about hand claps on an offbeat. So I guess one question is, do you mean that like you have a melody as well as singing? So like you're, for instance, maybe you have this, you have Mary Had a Little Lamb, and then you want to have some hand claps on the offbeats in addition to that. So what I would be doing is using a second voice for that, and maybe that's not actually what you need, but I'm going to just show what I would do. I would go in here and then switch to voice 3 with Control-Alt-3. By switching to voice 3, that's going to allow me to put these above the staff, and with stems up, I should say. And then 5, 0, and then I'll enter a pitch. I'll just enter a C, and then 0, C. So I now have those notes in there. And then I can select just voice 3 notes by using the selection filter. And so if I go to View, Selection Filter over here, and turn off voice 1. And so now when I select this, okay, so there's no lyric. Okay, that makes things simpler. Let me do that first. If there's no lyric at all and you just want that, I'm going to go back and re-enable voice 1 so I can select things and go 0 and then enter a C and a C. And now what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to enter this as what's called rhythmic slash notation. So I'll select that measure and then go to Tools, Toggle Rhythmic slash notation. And now I'll see this notated with slashes, which is common in a jazz context, not to mean hand claps, but to mean it's for accompaniment instruments, and it means do the thing you're going to do anyhow, play a chord or play a bass note or whatever you're going to do in this rhythm. But we don't want, in your case, you probably want an X note head. So I'm going to switch over to the properties panel and see if I can change that note head to an X, and I have it. So that's how you get it to look that way. Now the question is about the playback. So you're absolutely right that doing a change instrument will do the job. So if you do go to palettes and go to the text palette, change instrument, I can select hand clap. And now I have a hand clap. Except those aren't the right pitches, right, for hand clap. So when I enter those notes, I would have to have entered those notes actually using the hand clap. And get those in there, and then do the toggle rhythmic slash notation. So now it'll play as a hand clap. Yeah. So the thing is that you were saying you didn't want to have to do that, right? You didn't want to have to add the change instrument. Frankly, I would just do that personally. It's probably the simpler way of doing it. So adding an instrument change does it. Now, in this case, it's also going to then add a percussion clef that maybe you don't want to see. So I might hide that clef and, for that matter, hide that text. And then I could still select this measure and do Tools, Toggle Rhythmic slash notation. The Toggle Rhythmic slash notation puts it on the staff. And oh yes, I also then have to, in Properties, turn back playback back on and change the note heads back to crosses. So at this point, it looks and sounds the way I want. So if you didn't want to have to add that text, here's the other option here. You could add another instrument, right? You could go to the Instruments panel, say Add, and then actually add hand clap as a separate instrument. All right, and then on this staff, you can enter whatever rhythm you want. So I'll enter that rhythm. And now what I can do is make that staff disappear, but still play. To do that, in the Instruments panel, I'm going to click the little arrow here, select that staff. You can't select the instrument. If I select the instrument and turn off visibility, what we're going to hear is that it's not going to play either. That was sort of a design decision that could have gone either way. I would have gone the other way personally, but there were valid reasons for doing it the way they did it. So instead of hiding the instrument, MuseScore 4 now supports something MuseScore 3 didn't, where you can hide individual staves. So if you have a piano score, you could hide just the bass clef or just the treble clef. That was never possible before. So if I hide just that staff, now when I play it, right? It's playing it even though I don't see it. So those are basically your two options. You either use instrument change to hand clap, or you add a separate staff for hand clap. And then you would still want to, let me show it again. I would still want to probably copy paste those notes here and do the toggle rhythmic slash notation and the changing of the note heads to crosses. These notes aren't going to play, but those notes will. So you have your choice of two different ways of doing it. Either one of them is, you know, a slight pain in one way or another, but not the end of the world. So, right. So that's how you can do it. Okay. So there was a Muse Sounds playback question, and first of all, I can't answer questions about plans for Muse Sounds because I'm not on that team, and Muse Sounds is not open source, so I can't even get like a little, you know, sneak peek at what's going on. All I can say is, yeah, they're constantly improving it. They put out updates every couple of weeks or so with new little tweaks, you know, notes fixed, new articulations, whatever. So I would absolutely assume that over time they're going to add more and more, and eventually the plus for a stop note would get implemented. But I can't speak to any specific plans about when that might happen. And same for any other question about will Muse Sounds do this or will Muse Sounds do that? The answer is probably at some point, but I can't. I just don't have any real insight. So as far as who to bug about this, there's basically two places to report issues with Muse Sounds. And it's still not 100% clear to me where the best one is. But you can either go, I'm going to type in the links here. I'll put them in the chat here. One of them is musehub.zendesk.com. That is the general link for bug reports, feature requests, and just general support for anything relating to MuseHub, and that does include Muse Sounds. But, so it looks like it didn't like that I typed that without the HTTPS, so let me try it again. HTTPS, and see if that makes it happier. All right, whatever. It's either going to work to click that or not, but in any case, you see the address. The other place you can go to report issues with MuseScore in general, and that includes feature requests. And so that does include Muse Sounds. So there's always some overlap. Does Muse Sounds get discussed as part of MuseHub because that's the team that's providing it? Or does it get discussed with MuseScore because that's where you're using it? Still, frankly, not 100% clear. They're still making it up as they go along, basically. But let me get you that website so you have that website also. It is GitHub. And, you know, it's also, this information is in the MuseScore 4 course. There's a link at the top of the course with links, and I try to put this link as many places as I can. But this is the link to where you would file issues with MuseScore in general. If it's like a bug report where it's absolutely reproducible, you've got your score, you've got precise steps to reproduce it, someone else has confirmed that it's really a bug, then GitHub is the place to do it. If it's just questions, you're better off asking questions, you know, either in my community here or in the support forum on musescore.org. But for making a specific request about Muse Sounds, the issue tracker on GitHub is a fine place to do it. You might want to search for first. So if I search for horn, And, you know, I'm going to see all the bugs that reference horn, and I can kind of look to see if there's any issues already about stopped horns. And I didn't unable to trigger mute brass mutes. This is definitely a known thing that in general muted sounds are in the samples, but MuseScore doesn't have a way of triggering them yet, which is one reason why there's been a recommendation that if you have a Muse Sounds issue, it's better to report it in GitHub, because it might not be an issue with Muse Sounds. It might be an issue with MuseScore not communicating with Muse Sounds. And so that seems to be the case with brass mutes. The sounds are there, but MuseScore isn't yet communicating them. So that is the claim anyhow. In any case, so that's where you can report issues, but you'd want to check first. Frozen? Something's frozen. Oh, did I flip to a window you can't see? It's working for me, so I don't know. Okay, so let me come back now. I see Allison's got a question, and I saw Dave has a question about Heist connecting a Bluetooth keyboard. So I'm going to try to answer that one first, because I basically can't. In general, by Bluetooth keyboard, do you mean a MIDI keyboard or just a regular typing keyboard? I mean, MuseScore should be agnostic to how the thing is connected. If your operating system is presenting it as a regular device, then it should show up as a regular device. And shouldn't matter if it's connected by USB or Bluetooth or some other means, in theory. The reality is your operating system's drivers may or may not present it the same way. And so I don't know. It'll depend on the specifics of the operating system, the device, and the device driver you're using. Okay, so Allison's asking about pedal for organ and how to add footing marks. So I guess, okay, I am not sure what kind of pedal markings you refer to. So when you mention organ pedal, the first thing I think of are bass pedals, which are, just notes. And so that would just be on a third staff, right? Organ music is traditionally notated on 3 staves, and the bottom staff would potentially be for the pedals. But I have a feeling you're referring to like the volume pedal. It's probably got a more technical name, but the pedal that you use to control overall volume. And I don't know how that is notated. So I would need to know more about how, what kind of marking you're trying to add here. But I'm going to go ahead and, just for grins, add a organ to my score. Get ready, organ. And so I've got my organ here, and yeah, when you add multiple bracketed instruments, the brackets end up being a little funny. But yeah, so here we've got the 2 staves and the third staff for the bass notes. So certainly if you want just bass notes, right, you add those there. It actually does work to add, if I go to the keyboard palette and add the pedal markings, they will add. But of course, a damper pedal isn't a thing on an organ. So I don't even know what this is going to do, but it probably doesn't make sense, whatever it is. Let's hear. All right, it makes it work as if it was a damper pedal on a piano, because I guess that marking works for any instrument, whether it literally makes sense or not. So, so what do these markings look like? Is my question. Which foot is used for each note? So I don't know what those markings look like. But here's what I will say. And if you can post a picture in here, I can tell better. Or if you can post me a link to somewhere that shows it, that's great too. But I'm going to show you a couple things. One is if I go to add text sticking, this is a drum term that's used to indicate left and right. And so if I type L and R like that, I get that text below there. The sticking is, it's not aligned right now because drum music wouldn't be using ledger lines below the staff there, but we can certainly get those to be aligned. In fact, you can do it by using my handy dandy plugin, Align. Boom, there they are. Right? So, but you can also just use the properties panel, or you can just set the default position of your sticking, because I'm assuming you're not going to use sticking otherwise. So sticking is kind of nice because then you can just hit space, it works more or less like lyrics. Hit space, it moves on to the next note. So if it's just plain text, that'll work. If it's not text, let's try this. I'm going to go here and I'm going to enter a note, and I'm going to go to the Symbols palette. So I'm going to go to View, Master Palette, and then Symbols. And in here, I'm going to type organ. And I see all these funky symbols here. And I want to find out if any of these are, yeah, this is all tablature stuff. So none of these symbols here are meant specifically for foot. Let's try typing foot in here. What are these? Leap, flat foot, left foot, right foot. Well, these are just little L's and R's, so I'm not that impressed. But if you want that, what is this guy? Football rattle. Okay, that's probably not what we want. So in any case, that puts in a little R or a little L. So toe is upside down V, a heel is a U. So those sound like violin bow markings. Do you put them right foot are above and left foot below? Wow, that's new to me. Okay, so let's see. I wonder, heel, if I, what, no, that's left and right. So, you know, I'm discovering this as we go. If I go back to that palette, I'm going to go back there, View, Master Palette, and then Symbols. I'm going to scroll around here and just see what else I see. Is there a section here for organ? No. So is there a section for keyboard techniques? These guys, pedal heel. That must be what these guys are. All right. So we have some symbols. Pedal toe, pedal heel or toe. That seems like the right set of markings, right? So pedal heel 1 and pedal heel 2. Heel is a U. So I'm going to go with this guy here and just add the symbol. And now the thing is, when you add symbols, they don't get positioned intelligently. They just get positioned relative to the note head. So if you're talking about wanting them above and below the staff, I'm not going to add the symbol that way. Instead, I'm going to add it as text. So I am going to actually use that sticking thing, but I'm going to edit this text. And while I'm editing the text, I'm going to press Shift F2 or the Insert Special Characters button on the Properties panel. Shift F2 will open up the same thing. And now I can come over to where it says Musical Symbols, and under that same section, because this is basically the same stuff, but now it's adding it as text. So I can add the same symbol, that U, but now it's added as text. And then I can hit space bar. Oops, I have to be over here and press the space bar. And then I can use the upside down V. And then if I want one of these to be above the staff, just press X to flip it above. And apparently in doing that, it's not very smart. Oh, there we go. I had manually adjusted the position. So anyhow, you can use that. And I had done the alignment thing that had manually adjusted the position. So if I reset the position, that gets them back where they kind of belong according to the style. So anyhow, if you add as text, and you can use sticking, you can use staff text, really doesn't matter. Then use the Special Characters palette, the Keyboard Technique section. You can get to those symbols, put them above, put them below. So yeah, that seems like it. And thanks, I just learned something. So I appreciate that. All right, so Nick had another question. A 2-beat tempo. So Nick, I'm not sure what you mean by that. You might want to explain in a little more detail. I mean, if it's just having a tempo marking that says Dixieland 2-beat, then you can just add your tempo text. Alt-Shift-T is the shortcut, or you could use the palette or the add menu, however you typically like to add tempo text, and then delete all this junk that's there already, and just type what you want. And I've learned through experience it makes more sense to type that text first. Dixieland 2-beat tempo. And then I can delete the stuff that was there. So to just enter the text, That's all there is to it. Now, if there's some particular playback you wanted that to mean, like maybe you're meaning it to mean swing playback or something, then we can talk about that. But just to enter your own custom text in a tempo marking, just enter a tempo marking however you want and edit the text to say what you want. Okay, so meanwhile, let's see. Okay, so Dave is clarifying that he's talking about a MIDI keyboard. Okay, so that's great. So MIDI, again, MuseScore will look at anything the operating system presents itself as a MIDI device. So if the operating system is presenting it as a MIDI device to MuseScore, MuseScore will see it as such. It doesn't look at connections. It doesn't look that low level. It looks at, so it doesn't know USB versus anything else. It just knows what operating systems, I mean, which devices is the operating system presenting as a list of possible MIDI devices. So if the operating system is doing its job, you will then be able to go to Edit, Preferences, and under I/O, select that device for MIDI input. So that's how that works. And so you, as is always the case with MIDI devices or most devices in MuseScore, in fact, it pays to connect and turn on the, well, for Bluetooth, you can't even connect it if it's not turned on. So turn on and connect the device before you start MuseScore. If you've already started MuseScore, well, close it and then restart it. And then it should show up in this dropdown. If not, it's a question of your operating system not providing the right driver for the device, and you'd have to, yeah, so that's the thing. You'll probably have to set something up because that's, yeah, it's plug and play is a thing where in principle devices can say, I'm a MIDI device, and operating systems are supposed to prevent that and are supposed to detect that and do the right thing. The reality is it's never, or it's often not as simple as that. Okay, so Nick, okay, so then the question is, well, what do you mean? Because I don't know what that means. Dixieland 2-beat tempo. I don't really, I mean, I'm a jazz player. I know Dixieland refers to a style of, like, you know, kind of New Orleans jazz. But I don't have a specific notion of what that might mean. If you mean swing, like eighth notes going ba ba do ba da ba da ba da ba da ba dum, then instead of adding that as a tempo marking, well, it is going to be added as a tempo marking. We're going to come to the palettes, the tempo palette, and add swing, because that's the standard notation to mean swing eighth notes. If I do that, now we're going to hear, right? We hear swing. And then you can edit that text to say Dixieland 2-beat tempo if you prefer. So, so if it means cut time, then again, you would just change, you know, you would make that happen directly. So I'd select the time signature here and go to the time signatures palette and change it to cut time. If you want it to say 4/4, but behave like cut time, which really is almost the same thing, the beaming rules are slightly different, you can also right-click the cut time and go to time signature properties and tell it you don't want it to show the cut time symbol, but instead you want it to show, change the text to say 4/4. And then that will change that time signature to say 4/4, but still act like cut time. But there's not really going to be a difference in the behavior or the playback of that. And when you use time signature properties, it only affects the one staff, but there is a little trick that at least often works. I'm going to try it here. I'm going to Control-Alt-Drag this time signature to another, oops, I used Control, it's Control-Shift-Drag to drag that time signature down to the next staff. And then I can do that one staff at a time to easily copy that time signature. So yeah, I guess, Nick, you'd have to understand what you think that, it doesn't mean anything to me. It's a style indication. It means think about how musicians of that era might have played and attempt to reproduce how they might play things, but it doesn't really have a specific meaning to me. Okay, so let's see. Have I missed anything is the question. So one thing that I've mentioned before is when you have a question, it's great to use the little emojis here. If you put in a little question mark emoji, where's the emojis? Is that the emoji? That's a mention. This is the emoji. Add an emoji, and then, use the question mark emoji, and then here is my question. And, the question mark emoji looks like a question, which is nice, but frankly, it's not the most visible thing in the world. So I really don't care what you put, but put something at the beginning. You could put smileys, yay, and put some smileys in the beginning of your question here, blah, blah, blah. And, something that will make your question stand out. And then don't use emojis at the beginning of your post if you're not asking a question. So this is like a little self-discipline thing we can do to help me spot the questions a little more easily. All right. So my question is, have I missed anything else? I'm scrolling back to the beginning, scroll up, scroll down. Hand claps, muse sounds, faces, sing the lyrics. Login, that's just something different. Allison's question about the pedal, MIDI again. Someone was having a problem, but you came back and everything's fine. So, all right. All right, Rachel, yes, there's your question. I like that one. That's a great little emoji there. That's fine. All right, so the second set of lyrics. Oh, okay, yeah. So, what you're describing is a potentially tricky thing for sure. And I'm going to try to do this. You might have to help walk me through the specifics of what you're doing. But I will show you in general how this is dealt with. I'm going to just create a grand staff score because that works fine. Because I'm assuming when you talk about, let me take another look at where you're at here. I want to just get my stuff visible together. So I'm kind of guessing you're talking about SATB kinds of scores. So, oops, I want this one smaller too. Okay. So you've got an SAT. Come on, you. There we go. So you want the soprano is there, and then my alto voice is maybe this. So I've got soprano notes and alto notes, and it doesn't matter what order you enter them in. I could totally enter voice 2 first. So Control-Alt-2 for voice 2, enter those notes, and then go back, voice 1. Right? It doesn't matter what order I enter the notes in for the voices, but if the soprano is literally above the alto, which it normally would be unless you've crossed voices for whatever reason, then the notes take care of themselves. So let's talk about the lyrics now. What I think is going to be most effective is to enter the soprano lyrics first. So let's see, but I think we can do it either way. So let's see. I'm going to try it either way. I'm going to first put in the soprano lyrics first. So the soprano is going to sing soprano. There we go. And the alto is going to sing alto, and they're colliding with each other, right? So that's what you're seeing as the problem. So here's what I want to do. I'm going to undo that for a moment. I want to get the soprano lyrics above the staff first. So I'll click one, shift click the last one to select all those lyrics, press X to flip them above the staff. Now I can come to voice 2 and type Control L dash toe. And here's what's cool. I think if you now continue entering lyrics, it's going to continue the right side of the staff, I think. Let's find out. My underscore, no, right? And then if I come down to the alto and hit space here, alto, it continues below the staff. So once you've gotten started entering your lyrics above and below the staff using X, then you can just continue typing the lyrics and they'll continue sorting themselves out that way. So so I find it most effective to do the soprano first, then flip them out of the way, and then you can enter the alto. If you've got the alto lyrics in first, all is not lost. So I'm going to make a copy of this measure by pressing R, and I'm going to delete my soprano lyrics. Now, I forget if it's smart enough, because I implemented this, click soprano, click the so, shift click no. Yeah, it is smart enough to separate it out by voice. So notice it didn't select the alto lyrics. So I can delete these. So now let's say I want to enter soprano lyrics, and maybe I didn't already have any soprano lyrics. And if I type Control L and type so, it's colliding, right? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to hit escape, and I'm not going to panic even though they're colliding because it's still selected. Now I can press X and get it out of the way. And now I can double click it to edit and again start entering my lyrics normally. So yeah, there's little tricks and things like that that come in handy. And you know, I'm showing some ways that I would be doing things, but the specifics will come down to the nature of your score, and there's usually more than one way to accomplish the goal. So hopefully that gives you some good ideas. If you've got, if you continue to have problems, by all means, I recommend attaching your score, you know, asking about it in the community and attaching your score, and then we can take a look. But yeah, X to flip above. Now, X is a fantastic thing to know about. Let me show you like the different things that X will do. For a note, flips the stem, right? Keeps the note on the same place, flips the stem. For lyrics, it selects that lyric and flips it above or below the staff. It also works that way. Well, I think we saw that already for my these markings here, right? These text markings here, it flipped it between above and below the staff. For articulations, like if I enter a staccato here, Shift S, the X flips it correctly, but it also flips things correctly for markings that are supposed to change their shape. So which ones do? I actually forget. Most of them don't. But there's a couple. Yeah, Marcato doesn't, but I'm just going to pretend it does. If I select this one and press X, it does. So check that out. See, for Marcato, it actually flips it below the staff and upside down. Marcato is not normally ever placed below the staff, so I really couldn't remember if it's supposed to be flipped upside down when you do put it below the staff. But anyhow, for the markings that are supposed to actually flip their direction as well as their position, it'll do that as well. Okay. So, Dave, oh yeah, let me take a look at your picture, Dave, and because I have some. Oh yeah, your picture, MIDI key assigns, isn't working for whatever reason. So yeah, unfortunately, it's not working, so I can't necessarily help there. But if you, I would go. Well, since Heis apparently got it going, you could try posting in the community. Support forum is going to have more people that have done that sort of thing for sure. In general, for these sort of thorny system-specific questions involving particular devices, your best bet is to find someone who owns the same device as you, runs the same operating system as you, and your best bet for finding the right sort of confluence of people with the right experience to answer those kinds of problems is almost always the forums. All right, so Bob's talking about having a blind ukulele player. And memorizing, yeah, so first of all, this is absolutely the case that in general, blind musicians are going to do a lot of memorizing because, you know, reading Braille with your hand, it takes a hand away, and you can do that when singing a little bit, but it's not very practical for most other instruments. So that's your first go-to, is to learn it however you want, then memorize. But it's problematic because that means a lot of stuff being memorized. Now, the nice thing with ukulele is if it's just playing chords, then you have some other options, right? So I like that idea. Someone sitting and calling out the chords, yeah, that's nice. Or putting it into earphones, that's clever too. I like that, and using MuseScore to do that. That is pretty darn cool. Wow, that is cool. So I'm reading this. I use MuseScore to make a melody and metronome track for his left ear, and then in Audacity, it's calling the chords. So when you say calling them, you mean saying their names, right? C, G, D7, right? That's what you mean. Because if you just played the chord in there, MuseScore could do it, and maybe your ukulele player would be able to get it by ear, but that's a pretty big ask. So no, if you want to add the chord calls as an instrument, that is a really good question. Lots of really good questions. In general, trying to do lyrics as a sound font isn't going to work because you're going to need every syllable known to mankind sung on every pitch known to mankind, and sound fonts only know how to make one sound per pitch, and that's not going to work. But what you're talking about here is limited enough. You basically have a palette of chords to read out. C, D, E, etc., and C7, D minor, E flat, whatever the chords are. There's a large number of them, but a finite number of them, right? So as long as you can keep it to under 127 chords, which I think you should be able to, you should be able to define a sound font in which each of those is a different MIDI pitch. So MIDI pitch 0 through MIDI pitch 127, that's how many pitches you get to work with. And if each MIDI pitch is you calling out a name of a different chord, you can kind of pull that off. So what you would need is a sound font editor. So here is, so when I think about how many chords, I always have the number 72 in my head. And I have 72 in my head because I know 12 different roots, right? And I know 6 different types of seventh chord, basically. Major seventh, minor seventh, dominant seventh, major minor seventh, half diminished, fully diminished. So in my world, 72 is the number of chords that I'm normally dealing with, but you're probably not dealing with most of those seventh chords. You're mostly dealing with triads, and it sounds like maybe you don't really deal with E-flat chords so much on ukulele. But in any case, yeah, if you could totally do it in under 127. So there's is polyphone or polyphony. I'm not sure how they intend that to be pronounced, but that is the name of a popular sound font editor. There is also Vienna, and confusingly also Vienna. Vienna with one N and Vienna with 2 N's. And they are both audio software. One of them is a free sound font editor. The other is not, and I don't remember which is which. But in any case, those are 3 names you can look up for some ideas. And apparently, it's not particularly difficult to create a sound font, because I know any number of people on the forums who come in and have never made one before. They ask how to do it, and someone points them to one of those softwares, and like a day later, like, hey, I made my software, and it's got, the sound of crickets or whatever I wanted it to have. So those seem to be popular options that people have had good success with. So I guess that would be something to try. But I like your Audacity solution too. It's pretty darn clever. All right. So what else we got here? Have I missed anything else? Questions? Yeah, that was the question I already saw. Okay. So MP3, you've already got the calls. That's great. If you've got the calls, it's just a question of assigning them to different pitches. And then once you've assigned them to different pitches, okay, so then here's the other thing. You're going to assign them to different pitches, but then you're going to want a way to enter that in MuseScore. So you'll probably want to be clever about this and have the different Cs, the different MIDI pitch Cs. MIDI pitch 0 is a C. So then MIDI pitch 12, 24, etc. Or no, 1. I forget if they start with 1 or 0. So I feel like middle C is 65, or is it 64? One or the other. But in any case, make C, C minor, C7, and if there's any other variants you need, diminished. Diminished chords are fairly common for ukulele, at least at some level, because it allows you to play dominant seventh chords with alterations if you don't need the root in there and you assume someone else has the root. So this is a really common style of writing for ukulele, where you basically write the upper portion of the chord. If that makes sense. Like, you only got 4 notes to deal with. You can't play a full C major 9 chord, but you can play an E minor 7 chord, E, G, B, D, and then depend on someone else to have the root. And now you got yourself a C major 9 chord. So at one point, when ukuleles were more popular as accompaniment instruments, you'd have separate guitar chords and ukulele chords that would be presented. The guitar chords were the real chords, the ukulele chords were the upper portions of the chords. Anyhow, just saying that diminished chords are a thing in that world. So yeah, you want to make, you've got 7 or 8 different Cs available. I guess 8 different Cs, 8 times 12 is 96. Maybe there's 9 times 12 is 118. 9 times 12? Is 9 times 12 118? 108, whatever it is. It's you got a whole bunch of C's available, so you can make one of them be C, one be C minor, one be C major 7, one be C7, one be C minor 7, and you're not going to run out of C's. And then you can do the same for D's, make those be D calls. And then all you have to do in MuseScore is enter the appropriate octave of C to get the call that you want. So yeah, this all feels very feasible and like an interesting project. And I'm intrigued by the idea, and it's cool to think through the possibilities and realize that, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's possible. Now, in the end, is it going to be better than what you're already doing? I don't know. But it is cool to think about and should be possible. So now the problem is going to be for flute. It's not as simple, right? Because here, if you think about ukulele, you're playing chords. Well, first of all, you can play melody, but it sounds from what Bob's talking about like we're not dealing with that. We're just dealing with playing chords. And so you're playing a C chord, and it's probably lasting for a full measure or maybe at least 2 beats or so. It's not going to be like 8th note chords. So you're not having to call out every single note. You're just calling out 1 chord per measure or fewer on average. So that's feasible to just hear that feedback and then respond to it. Hear a C, play the C chord. As long as you get it in like a beat ahead of time, you're good. It's hard for me to imagine someone calling out melody in that same way. That doesn't seem feasible to me. I mean, as speaking for Chad here, I even if you're standing there whispering the melody into his ear, I can't see it. Now, if it's hearing the melody itself for him to play it by ear, then it's feasible, but now it's going to be way confusing because he's playing one note and he's hearing the playback of the next note to play. I also don't see that as being all that feasible either. So yeah, that would be it would be an interesting challenge, Marla. And to be honest, I don't know how other people might solve that problem. I mean, memorization is what people have resorted to traditionally as a way of dealing with that. And you are probably aware of, and maybe I've even seen you post there, MENVI, MENVI, Music Educators Network for the Visually Impaired or something like that. Ha. Okay. Am I back? I think I'm back. You know what happened? I think I'm back. Here's what I think happened. When I flipped back to my window, I started typing Menvi. Menvi, capital M, capital E, capital N, capital V, capital I. Capital I, Shift I is the shortcut. Look at that. Shift M, Shift V is the shortcut for toggling the camera. So when I type the capital V without having first clicked into the chat box, that turned off my camera. And capital M, when I typed the capital M without having typed in the chat box, that turned off my microphone. So lesson, make sure you're actually in the chat box when you start typing, or you might accidentally turn off your camera and microphone, because Menvi has both capital M and capital V, or capital whatever the other one was. It has both those capital. That's crazy. Capital V and capital M in that word. So interesting little coincidence there. I love it when technical issues are that easy to debug and that kind of funny about what the problem actually was. So anyhow, that mailing list has got lots of blind musicians in it, and so you might be familiar with it. Chad is very possibly already familiar with it. And there's often discussions of this exact nature where people are asking, hey, I'm having trouble memorizing things, and I have people who are willing to call out some information for me. What's a good way to do that? And then, there'll be great discussions on that mailing list. It's probably the best place for that kind of discussion. So question is for Dave, is that, see, the image isn't popping up for me. So somehow I don't know if it doesn't get uploaded fully or what's going on. But yeah, when you attached it, it probably shows on your system, but somehow didn't get transmitted. I don't know exactly why, because I have seen other images get posted through, but for whatever reason, that one isn't, and I can't say why. All right, so I guess the question now is, are there other questions here that people have that I could answer quickly in these last couple of minutes here? Because I don't think I see anything else. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, again, give you a little heads up on things coming up. So is my screen doing weird again? Is my screen doing weird things again? Huh. Oh, it's got that pop-up. So, oh yeah, here's one thing. That pop-up there is not anything I really needed to be showing. Or maybe you're not seeing that pop-up. I'm going to click this over here. Give me a moment. Okay. So little heads up again, next week is anniversary of all sorts of Mastering MuseScore related things. So I'll be kind of doing a little retrospective, talking about some stuff having to do with Mastering MuseScore in general, maybe doing a little recap of what's going on, and also doing a little preview of MuseScore 4.1. Harp fingering brackets. Oh, yes, if you mean the ability to put start and end hooks on lines, yes, that is, I believe, even already fixed, but it's certainly, there's, the code in there waiting to be reviewed and merged, and it's being worked on. That is definitely the case, but hopefully also that workaround I gave you works just fine. Once you've created one and put it in your palette, takes all of a minute, and then you're good from then on. So yeah, next week I'll be talking about that kind of stuff. Tomorrow, Music Masterclass, we'll be talking about intervals, we'll be talking about sight singing, we'll be talking about chromaticism. And I'm going to give you one little heads up. I kind of have it in my head. Gordon Lightfoot is not like someone that I grew up like listening to a lot, but we heard him a lot. And it seems like his passing has really affected a lot of people. A lot of people, in social media are really talking about that. And I'm going to take one of his songs to use as an example of various different concepts. So anyhow, if you want to listen to If You Could Read My Mind between now and tomorrow. Feel free, and so that you'll be prepared for some of the things I'm going to talk about. But anyhow, that's just a little more heads up on things to come. So let's get back to my MuseScore theme. So this has been the MuseScore Cafe, the Ask Me Anything session. And as always, lots of good, interesting questions and, things, material that we haven't talked about before. It's always fun with these because I never know what's going to come up. So thanks, everyone, again for being here. Next week, we'll be talking about past and future. That's going to be the main thing, the past, the future, and the present. I'll be, giving you a rundown of everything that's on the Mastering MuseScore world and the MuseScore world, because it's hard to keep up with everything. So I want to make sure everyone knows what's available, what all exists, and give you a preview of some things that are coming, all that kind of stuff. So masterclass, again, if you can check out that song between now and tomorrow, that you'll be doing yourself a little bit of a favor there. By all means, anyone in the basic music theory course, be sure to check out the lessons I've posted this week on the chromatic scale and intervals, and the sight singing demo I did, and the interval scavenger hunt that I talked about. I'm really hoping to get people to really engage with this, because this is important information that is, again, things that often fall through the cracks, that you can know something about intervals but not be able to really use that information, and that's what we want to address here. So look forward to talking to you all soon. Goodbye, everyone.